Welcome back to Rosen Sports Monday. Mark Rosen here, brought to you by Broadway Dental. My friend Ben Stein, Dr. Ben Stein over at Broadway Dental, and Lexus of Wyzetta and Lexus of Maplewood as well, thanks to Charlie Swanson. So look into those two great sponsors as we embark on our next show here today. And I could not be more thrilled to have my big brother in here with me today. You hear that laugh. It's the one and only Don Shelby. I call him the Renaissance man because no matter what the topic is, Don will give you an opinion. And most of the time he's right. But in any event, it's always interesting. And I love this man with every fiber and sharing so many great years and memories. It's great to have you here, Donnie. Love to have you as a guest.
This will be our 45th year of watching the Final Four together.
Yeah, I want to start with that because I think you started at WCCO TV in 78.
Yeah.
With Pat Miles, right around the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
right.
the weekend co-anchored the desk. It was phenomenal. But 1979 is when our tradition began, a tradition like no others, as someone once famously said. Bird against Magic, NCAA championship final game. Larry Bird, Indiana State. Magic Johnson, of course, from Michigan State. Michigan State won pretty handily, 75-64. It wasn't the best game ever, but it's what it signified. I think to this day, Don, it still has the highest rating of any basketball game of any kind on television. It drew those kinds of numbers. Those two put together.
Caitlin Clark numbers.
Yeah, exactly. Think about that. We'll get into that a little bit later. But what did that game, and if you look back on it now, and there's been so many documentaries done on their rivalry, which continued to obviously into the NBA, kind of do to you? What did it mean to you to see Bird and Magic go at it that night?
Oh, there's so many things, Rosie, that I loved about that game. I love the Cinderella aspect of Indiana State making its way all the way through after back-to-back 30-point games by Larry Bird, who nobody had heard of, and Magic, which very few people had heard of. Even basketball aficionados knew that Detroit was producing some incredible talent and that both Michigan teams were always at the top. But Big Ten people were aware of Magic. But generally SEC people, ACC people, Big 12 people, they didn't know. And it was always a question of whether it was going to be power scoring versus finesse. And it was a wonderful thing to watch. But it was a wonderful thing to watch the coaching and how they were able to take Larry Bird off his game and put him in positions that he was not familiar with, as though later on there was no position that he wasn't familiar with. But the scheme that Indiana State had developed was not sufficient to get him in place against the defense that had been put against him.
Judd Heathcote had done. He was the head coach.
Unbelievable, Heathcote. Yeah. So, there was always a question then that grew out of that, who's better? And who knew that later in life these people would become best friends and share intimate secrets. And it was a part of the game that I love most, not that which happens on the floor, but that which happens in locker rooms and happens off court, where you are a member of a family, whether you're playing on opposite teams or not. You eventually become friends, sometimes longtime enemies, but when that enmity ends, friendship begins because you have such great respect. And even at the time, Magic didn't talk smack about Bird. Bird didn't talk smack about Magic, which is odd for both of them. They respected each other. And throughout their entire NBA careers, respected each other. But that game, especially the Cinderella aspect, got so many viewers into the tent that I just thought, holy mackerel, this thing is going to blow up.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember, NIT was a big thing for a long time.
Right.
And then I think the NCAA tournament really took off from there.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to cover Magic Johnson's first Big Ten game in East Lansing against the Gophers, and a guy named Michael Thompson.
Oh, yeah, that guy.
Yeah. And I just remember people in town going, whoa, man, wait till you see this guy named Magic. And I had heard about him, and Gregory Kelser and the rest of the gang. But, so many people know Don from obviously watching you for many, many years on Channel 4. But they don't know what I got to know about you and your I would say love of basketball, but your passion. And you just talked about kind of the things that resonate with you more than anything. When did that start at an early age? You're just love of the game, love of everything that it represented, and it's continued to, here you are in your late 70s, the same passion that exists.
The origin story is not odd for a person who was born in Muncie, Indiana.
That says it all.
Muncie, Indiana, Del Book Sports named it the basketball capital of the world, high school basketball capital of the world. And in Indiana, you ask people walking down the street who your favorite teams are, and they all name high school teams. They pay no attention to college teams or to pro teams. Later, pro teams moved in. Later, Indiana State, Purdue, IU, Notre Dame. They started paying a little bit of attention. But these are mothers and fathers. This is what you have to keep in mind. The people walking down the streets in a city in Indiana are mothers and fathers and grandfathers, and their kids are playing ball. Mm-hmm. And they played ball. And it's the only place I've ever encountered where the women knew as much about the game, as much about the competition as the men did. Women not only held their own, they usually were smarter because moms are the ones who always went to the games. Moms were always the ones who drove to practice, often stayed in practice and watched, who knew the coaches, who knew schemes, could tell you whether you're in a 1-3-1, could tell you whether you're in a 2-3 and a 2-1-2. They could tell how you were playing, whether you were in a zone or a man defense. And then they would talk to you about the game afterwards. Now, why did he do that? Why did you make that pass?
The moms would do
Moms,
this.
yeah. And dads were generally quiet when it came to that. Some of them, especially the coaches and the coaches' sons, they were loud. But so if you woke me up out of a sound sleep when I was 9 years old and said, what are you going to be when you grow up? The answer of not me, but every boy in Indiana was, I'm going to be a professional basketball player. Mm-hmm. But before that, I'm going to make my high school team.
Well, let's stop you there for 1 second, because with the recent passing of Gene Hackman, it brought up all sorts of memories. And I remember you did a story about when Hoosiers did the movie.
For you, I did the story.
I know you did for Sports Sunday down at the downtown Minneapolis, going to the theater. But was it in Muncie, Indiana? Was it a real life kind of Hoosier world that you lived in, that you grew up with?
Yes, and even more intense than Milan.
Mm-hmm.
Milan was Hickory in that show. Milan was a tiny, just off the side of the highway. You had to not only take the highway down to Cincinnati, but then you had to drive to Milan. And it was all country folks, all farmers. And they ended up with an incredible team. And this was a state where there were no classes. So a high school with 3,000 students could play against a school that had 150 students. And that was that matchup, where the biggest school in the state was playing the smallest school in the state. Just unbelievable. So that was a wonderful highlight. And one of the reasons that people wanted to watch, and the name of the guy that took the last shot, Bobby Plump,
Bobby.
is still one of the most famous people.
Revered.
And then he went on to Purdue and played and did really well, but nobody knows anything about that. Nobody cared about his college career, only cared about that high school career. But
you're wearing your Mr. Basketball ring during this interview today. Does that ring mean as much or more to you than any of your television awards that you accumulated over the years? Because you don't wear it every day. I should make that very clear. But
no, I wore it today for
just
sure.
for today. But that many years ago, that had to be quite an honor.
It was, but that's not an Indiana Mr. Basketball ring. That's a Minnesota Mr. Basketball ring. Because I hosted the Mr. and Miss Basketball award ceremonies for 20 years.
Right.
And I always believed that when I came here, they said, this is a hockey state. And I thought, you're not watching these kids who are playing basketball. In time, this could be a basketball state. There are some wonderful players out here. And I don't think we pay enough attention to the wonderful ball players who went elsewhere, not just to the University of Minnesota, but went to Duke and went to LSU and went to Virginia and went on to great careers that were incredible basketball players themselves. But I think this is now equal. Hockey and basketball are equal in people's minds.
One of the things you were passionate about long before it kind of became in vogue, and certainly where we are today, is the evolution of girls and women's basketball. I know you fought an uphill battle for a long time.
I did. Royce and I fought.
Oh, I know you guys did for a long time. And then he had, our dear belated photographer, Al Crocker, used to have a term for girls basketball too. But when you watch the evolution, when you watch, one of your own from Hopkins, Paige Becker's winning a national championship. You mentioned Caitlin Clark. You were a champion to make sure girls had the same advantages as the boys did. I know you have 3 daughters. We should mention that.
Well, that you just
nailed it.
You called it. Yeah. I mean, I wasn't a great women's basketball fan, but I was blessed with 3 daughters, and basketball was part of my life. And I wanted to let them have some of the knowledge that comes not just from playing the game, but as I said in my book, The Season Never Ends, that the lessons that good basketball teaches you, the discipline and listening to coaches and taking advice, playing as a team, working on your assist game. In fact, at the end of the book, I say I think it's number 4, the greatest lesson in life and the greatest lesson in basketball is the assist. If you get good at the assist, you'll always be on somebody's team.
It's a metaphor for life, really.
It is a metaphor for life. And then you have to spend your rest of your life helping other people in the spotlight. You may not hit the game-winning shot, but you make the pass to the person who's open and has the best opportunity to win for the team, then you pass up your shot and get the ball in the hands of someone else. And so the assist, I think, could be a liberal point of view. It's not really, because it's basically almost a theological point of view that we help our neighbors. And that idea happened. I wanted them to have that instilled in them, but I wasn't born a feminist. But if you live in a house with 4 women,
strong women, I might add.
Wow, strong. They are incredibly strong and intelligent women. I got 2 going on to get their doctorate degrees. I've got a terminal degree, master's degree, authors, psychologists, therapists, engineers. I mean, these are incredible women.
Thank God your wife Barbara was there
It was
with
her.
her
Yes,
DNA,
her
genes to make this happen.
But so I thought, I'll coach traveling basketball. So I ended up coaching 7 years, and I coached all the girls and went to all the games in high school. And in fact, a lot of people ask, what is your greatest accomplishment in your life? And I think you know about this. The greatest accomplishment in my life, while I was doing the 5, 6, and 10, For my oldest daughter, who played the most,
Ashley.
I did not miss a game, home or away, in her senior year. So I would leave the 6, jump in the car, and drive to God knows where.
Right.
Drive to Hastings, and sometimes I was on there long enough to open up the gym door, catch her eye, and wave to her, and close the door and leave. But I never missed. Never missed that game. So that's the greatest accomplishment of my life, is to be there for the kids. And so for 7 years, coached. I did not coach Paige, just missed her, but I would have loved to have coached Paige. And in fact, I was talking to Tyrone Terrell the other day, who played for the Gophers, and he said, "Did you coach Paige?" And I said, "No, but she would have been a lot better if I had."
Yeah, she needed a little more boost.
And Kaz asked me to actually come. He was coaching all of the championship teams. Kaz asked me, "Would you come and coach my guards?" That's a true story.
Wow.
He said, "Would you coach the guards?" And I didn't have time. Life was too busy. But man, I think I missed a shot there, because then I would have coached Paige.
Yeah. Man, what a study in perseverance, the ACL and all that. I mean, hard work to get to this point, and modest and a great teammate.
Yeah. You see that in sports.
Yeah.
That's another thing that that you are taught. And if you have good leadership and coaches and supporting parents, you learn perseverance. You also learn that one of the things that is not common in America today is to expect the unexpected, to never be fazed by the unexpected. That something happens in a game. I've seen lots of players fold at the unexpected. But if you're in a position to expect that, then you just continue your game and make adjustments. And I want to tell you something, Rosie. That made me a better journalist. In this is an example. At the start of the Gulf War, right? We knew it was going to start around 5:25, 5:30. So we're going to do the 5 o'clock news.
Right.
We expected to then cut away to CBS during the half side of the 5 o'clock news.
Right.
Didn't happen. We go in to the John Lansing and said, "Well, what's happening?"
Our boss, yeah.
And they said, "Well, it hadn't started." And then Rather comes on. I thought of Rather. Rather comes on. Rather does a story about the economy. But we're watching ABC and NBC, and they've got just phoners from Baghdad with pork chops, little pieces of their picture of the reporter, and some background stuff that had been shot the day before. But CNN had Bernard Shaw, John Holloman, and Peter Arnett in the Al Rashid Hotel with a camera with a night scope. They had video, but CNN only had 3% penetration in this market at that time. It's unbelievable to hear. But only 3% of people with televisions could get CNN.
Could even get it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we knew who had the best stuff. So we huddled, and the two Johns and I said, "Look, if he doesn't have it in the second section, if Rather doesn't have it in the second section, I'm going out on the desk. I'll tell the directors, breaking news, come to me. And we'll drop CBS. We'll drop Rather like a hot potato and switch everybody to CNN." What?
That was unheard of.
You're going to dump the network? So the unexpected happened,
Mm-hmm.
but I was perfectly calm the whole time. And so when he did not have the second story out on the war, it was breaking news. Come to me at CCO and say, this is very unusual to interrupt the nightly news, but the war in Baghdad has started. They have no coverage. Our affiliate CNN does have cameras. We're going to switch you now to CNN.
Amazing.
And rather ate my ass
After that.
Yeah. But I concluded the conversation with, what would you have done?
Mm-hmm. And you're the backing of our management.
Oh, yeah.
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 All important.
And so it's what I'm saying is that expecting the unexpected, being able to flow with everything, and the idea that this is a gift that I have and a lot of people have. But the worse things get, the calmer I become. And I don't know why that is. Yeah. I watch people, chewing their fingernails and running around and trying to figure. And the calmer I become. That's basketball. That's what basketball taught me. You're down 7, 3 minutes to go, and everybody is just fretting. Everybody's fretting. The crowd's fretting. Your fans are fretting. Your coach is fretting. The teammates are fretting. And I didn't. I never fretted.
Good example we saw with Houston coming back against Duke on Saturday.
Both of them. Both of them. Florida came back.
Exactly. Hey, this would be a good time to take a break and hear from our wonderful sponsors and get back and talk some more personal stuff with our dear friend Don Shelby. So please stay with us. Hey, Rosie here for Broadway Dental and my good friend Dr. Ben Stein. I'm a patient of Dr. Stein's at both his sleep apnea clinic and dental clinic. He has a newly renovated and conveniently located dental office in Northeast Minneapolis next to Certix. I mean, it's the most modern facility you could possibly find. Dr. Stein has a great chairside manner. He's nice. He's understanding. He obviously knows his stuff, and he'll spend quality time with each patient. We'll make sure they are properly cared for. I want to talk about beyond the obvious dental care is sleep apnea. I was diagnosed with it years ago, and I was stuck with that silly, cumbersome CPAP machine, and I couldn't wait to get rid of it. And I mentioned it to Dr. Stein, and he set me up with his sleep appliance area. And it's the easiest thing in the world. You just pop an upper, lower appliance in each night. My snoring is gone. My wife says I don't snore at all, and I get a restful night's sleep. And if you have sleep apnea, Dr. Stein is the best to see as well to help you in that area. So if you want to contact them in Broadway Dental, give them a call at 612-379-2300. That's 612-379-2300. Hey, Rosie here for Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. If you're in the market for a new luxury vehicle, look no further than my good friend Charlie Swanson at Lexus. Whether you're on the west or the east side of the Twin Cities, they have got you covered with 2 great locations, Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. Check out the all-new Lexus TX, a spacious SUV with 3 rows of seating and plenty of room for all your gear. Head over to LexusofWayzata.com or LexusofMaplewood.com for details and to find your next ride today. Well, Don, you were talking about the relationship between basketball and journalism. When you realized your dream of never being an NBA player was probably going to hit you,
right.
Was journalism, the easy path? Then not easy path, but the easy way to kind of go, okay, I got to find something to do for the rest of my life that I'm passionate about.
Yeah. Well, I told my dad when I was getting ready to go to college, when it was obvious to me, on my small school, 5 guys. 4 of them got Division I scholarships to play basketball. I did not. So Dad said, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to go to school for drama. And he said, not on my dime. Not on my dime, son. That's a stupid, stupid thing.
Right.
And he said, pick a craft, pick a skill, pick something you're good at where whatever you're good at then will allow you to rise instead of being running into auditions and hoping somebody likes you That's not a piece. So I said, okay, I will. But I'll back up a minute because since I mentioned Dad, and he asked me when I was much younger, what do you want to be? And I said, I want to be a professional basketball player. And he said, who do you want to play for? Celtics? Minneapolis? You want to play for the Knickerbockers? Where do you want to play? And I said, I want to play for the Harlem Globetrotters. Swear to God.
Oops.
No, swear to God. Absolutely. And my dad, who was incredibly well-versed in history, said, you can't. And I said, why? If I'm good enough, I can't. If I'm really, really good, I can't play for them. He said, no, you can't. And I said, why? And he said, they only allow black people to play on the Globetrotters. And I thought, these were not the words, but I thought, these racist bastards.
You really thought you could play for them?
I did. I had no idea you could not play.
That's
because
funny.
I had, at that age, I thought they were all basketball players.
Sure.
And the NBA wasn't a big thing at that time. Yeah. And I didn't know there were rules. And so I said, I communicated something like these racist bastards to him. I didn't say that exactly, but it was like, why not? Why not? If you're really good, why can't you? And I said, that I didn't use the word discriminatory, but I said something like that. And Dad said, you don't know the half of it. And then he explained to me that black basketball players could not play in the NBA, so they had to form their own teams, like the Negro Leagues of baseball.
Sure.
And that was my first introduction to race. It was my very first introduction to race, and I had it backwards at the beginning. And so, let me finish the story. So when we do, from time to time, the Trotters will come in town, right? And I was on radio. So Curly Neal comes in, and I tell him the story that I wanted to always play for the Harlem Globetrotters. Well, he sent me a jersey, which still hangs in my den. But then he follows it up 2 weeks later with a picture of himself dribbling on the floor. He's down on one leg. He's dribbling. He's an unbelievable dribbler. He replaced Marcus Haynes in that position. And he signs it. Don, you should have been a Trotter.
Oh, my God. Goosebumps.
Love, Curly. And it hangs every day I look at it.
Yeah.
Every day I look at it.
That is as good as it gets.
Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, that is. Curly Neal. For those of you too young, unfortunately, to see the Globetrotters when they were at their best, Meadowlark Lemon and Curly Neal. And I mean, it
Goose Tatum.
Goose Tatum. When I was a little kid, my folks took me to see him, and it was a show. Now, were you one of the only white players on your team?
On my, I kept playing. I played for 28 years.
Right. Growing up in.
Then I went to the Air Force after college.
Yeah.
I played intramural basketball in college, and then I went on to the Air Force, and I played all Air Force basketball. And I was the only white player on that team.
Okay.
And, for 3 years, the only white player. And thoroughly enjoyable and one of the most enlightening parts of my life, and helped create for me my notion of race and understanding of the other. Because after 2 years, the other disappeared. We were all the same.
What a lesson there. Yeah. If only the world would be that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know you worked hard. You also played hard, and I was there with you through some of the toughest times, both emotionally and physically. And I know a lot of people are going through their own and continue to go through their own personal battles. And
Sure.
I think your story is important to tell in a form that can relate to people when having to do with your sobriety and having to go through rehab, and your career was on the line. You just started your family, and the tough decisions you had to make, and all of that basically saved your life. And you've been sober for how long now?
Yesterday was 45 years.
Wow. Yesterday. Who's counting? How fast? I can't. Well, first of all, I can't believe it's been 45 bleeping years. So I remember the day it happened. But, I mean, it was an eye-opener. That's for sure.
Saved my life.
Yeah.
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 And Ron Handberg, who himself right now is struggling.
Yes. Right. Our former news director and general manager.
Brought me in and said, and people who have had a relationship with chemically dependent people, this might resonate with them and sound completely absurd to anyone who does not have that experience. Mm-hmm. He brought me in and he said, all right, here's what we can do. We can send you to treatment. You have to stop drinking. We'll pay for it. We'll keep your paycheck coming to your wife and your children while you're in treatment. If you go to aftercare and stay sober, you can have your job back and with no impediments on any progress that you can make.
Wow.
Or if you refuse, under federal law, I can fire you right now and make sure, and I guarantee you, I will make sure that you will never work again in this business.
Chilling. And your reaction was?
My reaction was this. Can I have a couple of days to think about it? Because Rosie, this is where we're being serious. I could imagine selling shoes and not having a wife and family. I could not imagine not being able to take this medicine.
That's the power that it had over you.
I did not know how to live without this in my system. Did not know how. Because I started at 14.
Yeah. And how did you discuss this with your wife at that time? Or did you keep it all to yourself?
No, I said in that meeting, I said, if it means that much to you, now this is another alcoholic trait, people pleasing.
Mm-hmm.
I went to treatment, not for me or my family. I went to treatment to please Ron Handberg. Because I could tell how much he loved me and he wanted me to do this. I said, well, if it means that much to you, I'll do it. And probably I stayed sober for 3 years on Ron Handberg alone. And then I learned, no, you're getting sober for yourself. You're doing all of this for yourself and your family and your future. But I did that for Handberg, and so I went over to see him. And quite frankly, he looks pretty good for a guy with cancer. And I thanked him. I just said, if it weren't for you, I would not be who I am today.
What a man. Yeah. I mean, he had a huge influence on my life. And that says it all. You did it for Ron Handberg. The other personal story, I think it's important. It's related to basketball as well, because meaning you and me, Amelia Santinello, and our crew were headed down to New Orleans to cover the Gopher women's basketball team in the Final Four with Lindsay Whalen.
And I was courtside at every home game.
I know you were. Again, this is long before, and that was a wonderful time. We all just soaked it all in. It was as passionate a sport, an event as we'd ever covered. But on the day we left, you suffered a massive stroke.
Yeah.
At your home.
Yeah.
And
killed 2/3 of my cerebellum.
I mean, out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there were no signs, you had a hole in your heart? Is that what was happening?
I had a hole in the septal wall of my heart. Yeah.
Right.
A clot that usually would get put in your lungs and get broken.
Nothing that was ever detected could have been detected by physicals.
I had played 28 years with a hole in my heart. I always knew Rosie was working harder in practice than everybody else. I was only getting half my blood.
Right.
So it was shot through and went straight in my head.
Wow.
Anyway, so they tried to patch that, and the patch didn't work. And so I had to have open heart surgery 3 years ago to take that patch out and put another patch in. But that was after the fourth stroke,
Right.
because the patch wasn't working. And that one knocked out my ability to speak. And when I went to the memorial service with you,
Right. For Denise.
and you asked me to speak for Denise, I had to write every word down. I could, and 5 years ago, I would have just off the top of my head.
Sure.
I mean, I would have written it, but I would have memorized it. But I had to stay on the script through the entire thing because I couldn't form the words unless I saw them. Or I sounded like this.
Right.
That's the way I sounded. That last row hit my temporal lobe, and this is the way I talk. And they said, you'll never speak again. And because
this is your livelihood.
You expect the unexpected.
Yeah.
And I said, well, practice. Maybe I'll practice that move. And so I spent 6 months just learning how to make, because half of my tongue still is frozen. It doesn't work. And so that's why I sound not completely articulate. But I had to figure out where to make a T sound in a different part of my mouth with a different part of my tongue, or a D or a T. And the Ds and Ts are really weird because if you just do this yourself, you just say D, T, the only difference between a D and a T is 1/16 of an inch. And having no control over your tongue, so I just sat for weeks going, Tweedledee, Tweedledum, Tweedledee, Tweedledum, and I mean for hours and hours and hours to try to find a place to make the T sound and another place to make the D sound. So I had to teach myself how to speak again.
Right. You're like back in grade school almost.
Yeah.
Learning how to speak.
Yeah. Now I want to remind you of a story. Anoka Coon Rapids put together a charity game. It was a Thursday night game. Thursday night in November. There was 8 inches of snow on the ground. It was between the 6 and 10 o'clock show.
Okay.
We all go out there. RJ Fritz goes out there. Maxie goes out there. You go out there. Everybody goes out there. I know I can only play a half, right?
Got to get back for the news.
Have to get back for the news. We brought enough people to field 5 when we left. And they brought back all their stars from their high school teams. So they had a pretty good team. I scored 22 in the first half. So we go down halftime. This is a true story. We go down halftime, and I'm sitting on the bench. And everybody else is showering, shaving, getting in their suit and stuff.
Right.
And they walk by me in their dress clothes, and I'm in my basketball clothes. I said, Shelby,
we got to go.
We got to go, man. You're going to miss a 10. And I said, I'm not going. And he said, you're going to be fired. If you don't do the 10, you're going to be fired. I don't care.
I'm on a roll.
This is the only chance in my life for a 44-point game. And they picked me up. Somebody grabbed all my clothes, picked me up, and threw me in the back of the van and drove me to the station.
Oh, man.
And I've never forgiven them for that.
It's your opportunity. Horrible. That was the worst newscast you ever did that night. 'Cause your mind was wandering back to the... Well, that tells me everything that I know about Don Shelby. You related, I think, a lot of people who, again, with what you had to overcome with the strokes and learning how to speak again and everything else. And here you are all these years later. How ironic. You're on stage. You're not just, okay, I'm just going to, talk to my family, my friends, and, it's still struggling. No, you get in front of the Chanhassen Theater, right?
Right.
Nancy Nelson.
For 3 years. Have been
unbelievable.
Yeah.
And how does that feel?
Feels fabulous. Because it takes me back to a story that I told you before. At the end of every show, I go back to the dressing room, take off my makeup, and I say, Stick that in your pipe and smoke it, Dad.
Oh, that's your dad was still your motivation after all these years. Yeah. There's a surge of energy you get when you're on the stage, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
You can understand why live theater is so powerful.
Yeah.
I don't know what else is left for Don Shelby. I mean, you've climbed mountains, you've done it all. Your fishing, your outdoor work, your work with Ann Bancroft. I mean, everything you've done in this city. Steger, Will Steger.
Jim Brandenburg, God rest his soul.
Man, I thought of you when I read about his passing.
I spent so many hours at Ravenwood up in Ely with him, and out in the woods, and with his camera, and just watching this master work. And then we would just sit and talk about rock and roll, because before he did all of his photography, he was a rock and roll. He was in rock and roll group.
Interesting. No one would ever guess that. So
we'd sing songs together.
So for people of our age, whatever, it can be younger. What lessons do you have as far as getting out of bed? You know, the world can be kind of a crappy place right now for lots of reasons.
Oh, it is a crappy place right now.
But what advice do you have for young people, for people just as far as getting up and staying motivated, not getting distracted, maybe staying off social media a little bit, whatever it might be, just to kind of, you learned a lot of lessons the hard way. I did too, but, just sort of staying the course and finding a path for yourself.
I'm split on, I've always been a proponent of people gathering as many facts as they can and spending the inordinate amount of time and mental energy of trying to figure which facts actually point to the truth. I believe that for citizens, and not just generally, but all citizens, to consider facts. But for young people, pay no attention. Live your life. Have fun. Make friends. Girlfriends, boyfriends. Live your contained life of adolescence, because there's plenty of time for you to worry about the horrible things that can happen in life. I want to shelter people's youth. I don't want their youth to be encumbered by pain and concern and worry. That doesn't seem fair. Our job as parents is to protect them from that. And certainly we can have conversations with them. But essentially, I would say to them when they feel concerned is don't worry. First of all, worry is a waste of time. And I learned that, Rosie, in treatment. I was worried all the time. And a man made me write down everything I was worried about. And then he said, go into that room and spend an hour worrying. And so I did what I was told. And I worried for an hour. Then I came out and he said, did you do that? And I said, yes. And he said, now on your list, what changed? What, on things you worried about, what changed? What did your worrying do that hour? Well, nothing. He said, well, that's the lesson I'm teaching you. To mark out all the things that you have no control over. Don't worry about them. You have no control. There's nothing you can do. Don't worry about them. Make a list of things that you can do something about, and then make another list of the things you will do. That you will do. And so the list suddenly went from 30 things to 5 things. So that's 5 things to worry about. But you didn't worry about them because now you're worried about the list. What am I going to do? How am I going to fix things? And so I always try to think of the constructive things we can do to change the current predicament we're in. Basketball. So they throw a press on you. You didn't expect them. Your scouting report said they don't press. Now you got to look at it and go, what are we going to do? Well, if you have prepared for the possibility, the unexpected to occur, as soon as you see the press is on, your brain immediately goes to the press breaker. And you apply that and you beat the press and they pull it off. So that's the way I think these college athletes are thinking. That's the way their coaches are thinking.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they have some incredible coaches. Kelvin is probably the best. And so
Kelvin Sampson.
Yeah. And so the unexpected loose ball, Kelvin trains for that. Kelvin has at the end of practice, every practice, a suicide drill. And I never heard of anybody ever doing this outside of the state of Indiana because it's brutal. But two people line up, there's a line of people, and he throws the ball out in the middle of the court, rolls the ball out in the middle of the court, and the guy who gets it gets showered. The guy who doesn't get it goes to the back of the line, and you keep going, and you fight. You fight like a wrestling match, like Jay was coaching you, not a basketball coach. Mm-hmm. And you would go out there and you fight, and you come back with nail marks and black eyes because you're going to get that ball no matter what. That's the unexpected. Ball comes loose. Boom. Who did that? Larry Bird. Mm-hmm. Trained to do that. Maravich trained to do that. Magic trained to do that. Isaiah trained to do that. Because you know the unexpected is going on. What are you going to do in the unexpected? Mm-hmm. The unexpected happens. You got to step on the person who doesn't know that it's going to happen.
Wow. The lessons of basketball in real life come full circle.
And so we apply that today to the things that we're facing. What can we change? What can we not change? Mm-hmm. There are things we can change, and I'm of the opinion right now that I'm going to adopt a Herman Melville character called Bartleby the Scrivener. And all he says in this entire book, he's hired to do a job, and a boss keeps asking him to do things. And that is, he says, I prefer not to. And they don't know how to handle that. No one in the office knows how to handle that. And so they have to get somebody else to do the job. And they go back and they ask him to do something else. I prefer not to. And they say, and they moves in and lives in the office. You have to move out of the office. I prefer not to. And no one knows how to handle it. I'm adopting, I prefer not to. Mm-hmm. So that means, I think there are now T-shirts like this, no surrender in advance. I prefer not to surrender. Mm-hmm. I prefer not to surrender to anything, to a person, to a party. I prefer not to surrender to fear. I prefer not to worry. I prefer none of these things because without being political, I'll just tell you this. Time is on our side. It takes 5 years to do anything in government. And then we get times on our side. Mm-hmm. We live 5 years. We'll be through whatever problems there are, whether Republican or Democrat. You're going to be through it. Take a breath. Decide what you're going to do. How are you going to resist? Resist whether it's Democrat or Republican. If you're MAGA, resist the Democrats. How are you going to do that? If you're liberal, how are you going to resist MAGA? Both sides act exactly the same way. Simply do not comply with that which goes against your moral teaching. Do not comply.
Those are great words to end on. We could go on and on and on, but Don, I treasure our friendship and really appreciate the time, and I'm sure our listeners do as well. And love you like a brother. Always will.
I love you as a brother.
Thanks, Donnie.
You replaced my brother. I had my best friend.
Goosebumps.
He died.
Yeah.
And
I know you told me.
I needed another one.
Yeah.
And you are him.
Always been there for me. Thank you, my friend, for being here today.
Thank you.